I don't know how many more times I'm going to have to. Good morning, everybody. How are you doing? I know how you're doing. It's miserable outside. It was miserable yesterday. I know what the conversation is going to be like. Probably pretty miserable. But let's be honest. After what we saw yesterday, how could it be anything else? I don't know how many times we've opened the therapy room here on United People's TV on Monday mornings over the last few years. A lot. A lot. But yesterday was, in my opinion, I think that was the lowest point for Erik Ten Hag that he's had at Manchester United. And there have been low points, all right? There have been plenty of low points. But I called it a complete defeat, right? And that's kind of what I felt it was. There was no point in that game where I thought, well, United, no, we were 1-0 down after 3 minutes, 2-0 down after, 46 minutes. The red card, there was a 10-minute period in the second half. But I'm here this morning to try and have a chat to you, all right? Fire in your comments and your questions. I know what the majority of the opinions are going to be. And Erik Ten Hag was directly questioned about whether he's worried about getting sacked. But after that performance, you can't say that it isn't a possibility. And for a lot of you, it looks like the right decision. I will try and interact with as many of you as I possibly can. My head was hot yesterday. I got it spectacular. When I watched that Bruno red card, man, I've been playing that over in my head. I never react like that. Anyway, I'll speak about that later. Who's here from everybody? Mods, and I saw you there earlier. Anna, you're there too. Josh, you'll be here as always. Alex, good morning to you, and Carl as well. And Aaron, Akash, Tony, Liam, we've got JC, we've got Teresa, John. All of you, thank you for joining. And look, I mean, Marie down there saying it was so bad, it was hilarious. I mean, that is not the word I would use to describe it. Yesterday was a big game, man. All right? Huge game. And I've gone on record, and I've done a video, and I stand by what I said there, that I don't think INEOS plan on making any form of decision until November. However, all right, the scale of that defeat yesterday, that's what I mean. It was a total defeat. It was a complete defeat. It wasn't as if we just came off the back of a tough game where United, we weren't in it at any point in the game. And it was an obliteration. And I've gone on record to say that this season is about development. I said we need to see a Manchester United 2.0 this season. And that means we start controlling games of football. The finishing, well, we had no real chances to finish in that game, so there's no point moaning about that. But just elements, not being played through, conceding 20 shots a game. That game yesterday was a horror show. And all the worst aspects of last season brought into this season, and with a really strong team too. All right, Erik Ten Hag was at Carrington early this morning, and no doubt he's going to be working on repairing the damage that was done in that game, but we heard that after the 20 game. And then that game was worse. All right? Now I'm going to run through, before I head down to the chat, I'm going to run through what Erik Ten Hag said after the game, what the Athletic are saying, and what the Telegraph are saying, what the initial reports are saying. All right, I'll bring you that first, and then I'll go down and read some of your comments out. Now, this is what Erik Ten Hag said directly when asked if he feared that INEOS would be considering replacing him. He said, "No, I'm not thinking about this. We all made in togetherness this decision to stay together as an ownership group and a leadership group in the summer. Also, we made a decision after a clear review what we have to improve as an organisation and how to construct a squad." The Athletic down here reiterating that is the case, saying privately those in charge, I think this is from Laurie Whitwell, privately those in charge are echoing Ten Hag's sentiments that altering the infrastructure and working practice at the club was the main priority when INEOS arrived, and patience is required to allow that to bed in to see results. Following that up, you've got this from James Ducker from the Telegraph saying Erik Ten Hag is going to remain in charge for Porto and Villa. Focus remains on supporting the manager, but it's a big week and the pressure is building. And there is nobody that can disagree that pressure is building because of the scale of that defeat. as I said. Oh, man. That was bad yesterday. Look, man, we've bloody lost 7-0 to Liverpool. I don't know how many times. I think we've conceded 3 or more goals 25 times under Erik Ten Hag now. Just fire in your comments, all right? I'll try and have a conversation about it with everybody. Someone's saying thoughts on the Ole rumours. There are no Ole rumours. That was just Solskjaer last week at a what was it? I don't know. Somewhere in Norway. He was just asked and he said, yeah, at some point. Or if I ever got the chance to be a Manchester United manager again, yeah, of course I would. Of course he would. Stevie's saying, when you are no longer shocked by these kind of results, you know we are in trouble. I was pretty shocked by it yesterday, man. Maybe not surprised in the fact that we have seen this so many times before, but I'm shocked that we're now seeing it again. And I think that's why I'm saying this is the lowest point for Erik Ten Hag, because we've seen performances like that last season. Well, we saw a performance like that earlier this season against Liverpool. 3 games we've played at Old Trafford this season. We've scored 1 goal in 3. And our last 2, we've conceded 3 in each. And we've been dismantled by both Liverpool and Spurs. We had a game plan going into that game. The game plan was really, really obvious. All right? I was always worried about Garnacho up against Van der Ven because Van der Ven is like a ridiculous athlete. That run from him, we'll speak about that a little bit later. But with such a strong team, right? I'm going to pull this up here. On paper, it's the best starting 11 that Ten Hag really could have put out. Now, you could say you might switch Xerxes for Højlund. Some of you may argue Ahmad for Garnacho. But it's very minor differences. That was pretty much the best team that Erik Ten Hag could have put out. And we had the midfield trio on paper that's the best. Ugarte, Mainu, and Bruno. And we played worse. Bernard saying everyone dismantles us, Sam. We are easy to read and counter. I think we are an easy team to play against, man. We really are. And I think that's what I said in the match reaction. It's so startling when you watch Spurs play through our press. Really, really straightforward. Like, it's not like deft touches or quick they were just simple balls. Player in space, pass to me. Player in space, pass to me. Just walking their way through our press. And we couldn't get anywhere near out of our defence when Spurs pressed. Now, JC, you just said down there in the Super Chat, you said communication issues. And I don't know what to describe it as. And I'm going to run through what Gary Neville said in a little bit. But the players, again, didn't look like they knew what they were doing. At all. And I think those sorts of occasions are really apparent in Manchester United when adversity strikes. When you go 1-0 down after 3 minutes when Van der Ven runs through your entire team. And any sort of semblance of a game plan that the players may have had in their head is kind of ripped up. Is that down to Ten Hag? Is that down to the coaches? Is that down to the players? That age-old argument when you reach this point in a manager's tenure where you decide where you point your fingers. Now, I'm pointing my fingers everywhere, man. Akash, you're saying, I was so disgusted with how bad our pressing and passing was, especially from Xerxes and bruno. Man, I was speaking with my mate Charlie before the game, and I was like, there's one thing that Xerxes done well so far this season. It's his first touches. And then first touch was awful in that game. Was it the occasion that got to him? I don't know. Awful. Akit, you're saying, I'm not Ten Hag out, but I will never forgive Ten Hag for that 7-0 against Liverpool. I'm very concerned where we go from here. Now, that 7-0 against Liverpool, of course, was... Nothing's going to become more humiliating than that. But I think in the grand scheme of where we are now, the summer that we had, and I think it was a largely positive summer. Now there's going to be arguments about, oh, United's recruitment was awful, this was wrong, that was wrong, this was wrong, that was wrong. I thought United had a very good summer. And I thought we were in a far stronger position as a squad this season than we were last season. So off the back of all of that, And the fact that we've now got a CEO, a sporting director, a technical director. We're putting 50 million into Carrington. We're pushing ahead with new stadium plans. All of these positive things are happening behind the scenes. And then you play like that. That's what makes that, in my opinion, a new low for Ten Hag. Because there has been a lot of positives that's happened behind him to support him. And instead, the football seems to be going backwards. And that is the sort of... Chris Sutton, I can't believe I'm bloody agreeing with Chris Sutton, saying that's the sort of performance that gets managers sacked. Penny for INEOS' thoughts now. As I said, I felt that INEOS would give Erik Ten Hag until November to say, okay, prove us that you are developing this team. Prove it to us. You've got 10, 12, I don't know how many games left at that point. And then we're playing like that against Twente. Now, the Crystal Palace game, I mentioned it in my match reaction, we had so much control in that game, and we just didn't finish. Should have been 3-4-0 in the first half, let's be totally honest. And then you play like that against Spurs? Now, people going down in the comments, oh, it's only Spurs. We really going to be whipping that quote out from Fergie from all those years ago? You really want to go there? Van der Ven, incredible defender. Postecoglou's team, when they play well, they're a very good watch. They leave themselves open. But we didn't exploit that at any point yesterday. The balls over the top were overhit when they happened. We couldn't pass out from the back and exploit them on any sort of counter-attack. Spurs have weaknesses, and Manchester United just didn't have anything to exploit them at all. And you're saying parallels with Ole's last game in charge, what, against Watford? Look, the red card killed the game from that point. However, the game was pretty dead before it. So look, I'm not going to even slightly suggest, by the way, that red card was the point where the game changed. All right? The reason I lost my head at that point, I'll speak about it later. The reason I lost my head, though, was because of how bad we were playing up until that point, and it felt like a sort of petulant kick out, but it wasn't. He just slipped. Teresi saying, I hate the idea of changing managers again and being like Chelsea, but I fear we must. Vicky, you're saying Rude's not the answer. Like, you know, one thing I'll say on record here straight away. If INEOS do decide to move on from Erik Ten Hag, I think it's guaranteed that Ruud van Nistelrooy will become interim manager. Whether Ruud van Nistelrooy would then follow on, I don't know, but it would definitely be Ruud in the short term. Whether that turned into the long term, we don't know. Ebifemi saying, until we get a proper goal-scoring striker, United is going nowhere. Well, Højlund scored, 15, 16 goals last season? And he's still yet to start a Premier League game for us? Still clearly not fit. Xerxes is that 9.5. He's not a proper striker, but he should be there to enable the wingers to do more. And then, well, nobody was enabling anybody to do anything. Simi Skims, you're asking, why is it guaranteed that Ruud... That's just a personal opinion. I think that's partly the reason why INEOS felt that Ruud could come in. Because I think it gave them that... not safety net, but the ability to have an interim manager. And look, can I just say this again? Don't bring up Gareth Southgate's name again, all right? It was never a possibility. I still remain that it isn't a possibility. Oh, yeah, but Dan Ashworth knows him. Yeah, great. No. Let's see what it's saying down here. Yeah, look, man, that first goal. Can we just pull this up here? Ugarte was about 2 seconds too late reacting to Van der Ven just sprinting past him. So by the time he tried to engage, he was behind him, couldn't catch up with him. Mazraoui didn't have the legs to catch up with him. De Ligt didn't have the legs to catch up with him. It was just a purely athletically, physically dominant sprint and just a simple pass across the box. And Dalot didn't mark his man. Yeah, I mean, you could pick out 4 or 5 players. I'll be honest, I thought it was a bit, when I kind of agree with some of the reaction, I thought it was a little bit weird that Gary Neville was going so hard in on Rashford that he didn't track back. Rashford could easily have tracked back. But by the time Van der Ven was gone, Rashford would have just been chasing his shadow. Would have got absolutely nowhere near him. So you can have a go at Rashford, you can have a go at Ugarte, you can have a go at Masraoui, you can have a go at Delo, and that's to the point where you realise it's just a really crap goal to concede as an entire team rather than any one individual who made a mistake. That's what that goal was. And against Twente. That's what we hoped we left in last season. Goals where players just walk through our team. Right, let's read some more comments out here. Vincent, you say, morning. In my opinion, Ten Hag doesn't change. Ten Hag doesn't change something in the next 2 matches, he's got to go. We will fall far too behind in the league otherwise. Well, where is it? James Ducker from the Telegraph's there saying, look, he's going to remain in charge for Porto and Villa. And lots of us now, well, of course you're going to fear the worst. We've won 1 out of our last 9 European games, and that was a 1-0 against Copenhagen at home, I think. We've won 8 out of our last 20 home games in the league. We're playing Porto, which is our probably the hardest game that we've got in this entire league. It is the hardest game that we've got. And then we've got Villa away. And Villa's not going to be an easy... Of course, Villa drew against Ipswich, but Ipswich away won't be an easy game. There aren't many easy games. Will, you're saying that Van der Ven shouldn't be allowed to run half the pitch without being... Yeah, how did nobody engage? Stick a leg in. Shoulder him. Do something. But nobody could get near him. In its simplest terms, it was just he was a better athlete than anybody else in our team. And they couldn't get near him. Even if they wanted to stick a leg in, I don't think they could. See, Natasha, I don't think that, right? See, you're saying I definitely feel that they are throwing the manager out again. Look, we can go into that end of cycle, and I'll be like, oh, let's get the glasses back on, right? Okay, so is it the player's fault? Is it the manager's fault? And we can do that. Honestly, I don't think the players know what they're doing. And that has to come down to coaching. And that being said, the application was awful. But this is the thing. It's that point where you realise there's evidence for both sides, and you realise that probably nobody's wrong. Probably there's a semblance of truth in everyone's frustration, whether it's towards the players, whether it's towards Erik ten Hag. But Christ almighty, man. At the end of the cycle. See, that's one thing I don't agree with down there. Siegs, you're saying, look, I don't want another reset. Hypothetically, Erik ten Hag moves on. It won't be a reset. I think Manchester United got a pretty decent squad. We should be significantly better than we are, right? Now, I'm not saying that we should be up there competing with City this season. That was never the goal. I mean, it is the goal, but it's not the goal for this season. But crap, man, you can't be going backwards. We're still going... We're not even... We're not just not developing. We're actually going backwards. That's how bad that game against Spurs was. It wasn't just like you stopped the progress. Oh, it's back next year. Back, maybe next year. Back next week. Man, Erik, man. I don't know what you're going to pull out the hat, but you're going to have to pull something out of the hat because, like, Gary's spot on here, right, when he says this.
It was a disgusting performance. I think that's the word I used at the end. But do you know something? All my words that I've used, you may see headlines around them. Neville calls Manchester United disgusting. When I think back to Christian Eriksen's comments after the game on Wednesday night, from someone who's in the dressing room, from someone who's a very senior player who should be trusted and has had a long, successful career.
What do you think about that? Gary, I'm not going to play the whole thing. I mean, I'll probably get shut down for copyright for even that. But Gary goes in to explain that the fact that Christian Eriksen said that he's kind of questioned the application of the players. Fuck, man. When will it... When does it end? Like the cycle of 1 step forward and 2 steps back. When does it actually end? INEOS aren't going to be as emotional as us fans. No, they shouldn't be. And someone's down there saying, "Oh, you like making excuses for Erik ten Hag." I'm not making any excuses. I don't think Erik ten Hag has really any excuse for what we saw. The team was there. I mean, the only player probably who isn't fit that would be in that starting 11 is Luke Shaw, if he was fully fit, but that's never going to happen again. The full team's there. It's now what? How many games are we in the season? 5? 6? Don't know. Something like that. We're playing like that. Got one Europa League, 1 League Cup game, and what, 5? Yeah, I think it's 7. Gabriel down there saying the players didn't turn up. Erik ten Hag is coaching these players are just not there. Eriksson said it. Dylan saying factually all the negative fans were correct about last season. He should have been sacked after the Champions League. Well, not Champions League. Do you mean the FA Cup final? I'm guessing. Pierre, you're saying, Sam, what do you think the implications would be if we wait until the end of the season with no improvement in general play and then we look at getting new management? Does that set the project back? I don't think there's any way that this current form that we're in lasts an entire season. I don't think there would be a single club in the Premier League that would play like we're currently playing and the manager survive until the end of the season. That just wouldn't happen. I think that's very unrealistic to say that could happen. And in that sense, what happens in the interim? And I think it would be an interim. Imran, you're saying we're continuing where we left off last season. I don't think it's even that. It's so much good has happened behind the scenes, but it hasn't brought improved results and it hasn't brought improved performances. Like prior to that game, you could look at Manchester United, as far as chances created in the whole league, we were 4th. But in terms of finishing, we were 19th, which is ridiculous. You should be finishing your chances. So the numbers behind showed INEOS, well, if the finishing improves, it's going to be there. And then that game happens. Well, what am I going to... Onana's performance. I actually thought he played quite well, especially in the one-on-ones. That's about it. There is nothing else you can take from that game. And that's why it's so damaging for Erik ten Hag. John and Jibat, you just sent us some super chats. Let me read these out, and then I'll keep reading some more comments. As I said, this is an open floor, if you want to call it that. Johnny's saying the majority of fans wouldn't have said we'd win the league before the season started. We need to have faith and back the manager. We're clearly building a new United at the moment and need patience. I don't think, John, that you can just simply say trust the process anymore. The whole concept of saying trust the process, it loses steam very quickly. The fact is that Ten Hag has been, I would probably say, backed more than any manager post-Fergie. Now, not just talking about financially, talking about the support network that he's also got behind him. And that has to garner results. Now, we might come off the back of a tough loss or a tough game. Sure, that's fine. That's fine. But putting in a performance like that, where it really looks like it almost looks like sabotage. It was that bad. Like there's not one aspect of that game that you can hold on to and go, oh, there you go. That was good. It was a complete defeat. And it's damaging, man. Jibat, you're saying my main problem with Ten Hag is that he's stubbornly sticking to this one way of playing. Sets us up well in the first season, even the second season with a 4-4-2, but keeps ditching them and going back to the old one. So I disagree with that. I think there's definitely more than one way of playing that we have already done this season, in and out of possession. But United, I'm not saying that we've really done any of them well, by the way. But we went with that 4-2-4 again. In possession, what we saw against Palace was the best that we've seen. 3 at the back, Dalot inverting, Bruno and Eriksson as the 2, and then 3 up front. And it really, really worked. But it didn't. Just nothing worked in that game. Absolutely nothing. And look, can I just quickly say this point here, right? Two things. Number one, right? Erik Ten Hag, speaking after the game, saying, look, we've got to show resilience. We have to accept this and get better. And that in itself is a fair comment in isolation. However, hearing Erik Ten Hag speaking after the game and saying, this can't happen. A defender dribbling across the whole pitch without being stopped. But the exact same thing happened in midweek against Twente. And nothing was improved and nothing changed. And the exact same thing happened against Spurs. So we do have to address it, but we had to address it after the Twente game. Not only for a few days later, for the exact same thing to happen. And for us fans, the same thing that we've really been seeing all last season. That just like beeline that players seem to have to go straight through us. Look, right, I want to have a quick conversation here about this. It was proper playing on my mind yesterday because I pride myself on not being that guy. But I was that guy in reaction to that Bruno red card. What did I say? I said Bruno's lost a lot of fans from that. It's unforgivable. Because in the moment, I looked at that and I thought Bruno, after the frustrations of that first half, petulantly kicked out at Maddison. And I was spectacularly wrong. Hands up, spectacularly wrong. I corrected myself, but it didn't really matter. It was nowhere near a red card. Yeah, but the thing is, right? Okay, look, I completely agree. It wasn't a red card. It did have a big impact on the second half of that game. However, Man United were awful prior to that red card. And it wasn't a red card. All right? Ten Hag's right. Bruno's right. I think even James Maddison said that it wasn't a red card. But that wasn't the reason that we lost, was it? That wasn't the reason that we lost. United were just simply dismantled. And maybe that's even the wrong word to describe it. Because to be dismantled, it makes it sound like you were built up in the first place. United were just walked all over. That's what it was. We never had anything. I'll read some of your questions down here. Obviously, Bruno's getting a lot of stick. Vic saying definitely not a red, but Bruno's been terrible and should have been dropped for that game. You're never going to drop Bruno against Spurs, especially when they're playing that higher line. But we just didn't exploit it enough. There were a couple of times, maybe, a couple of overhit balls back to Garnacho. Garnacho hitting the post. I think that was the closest we came, wasn't it? I think so. Breen, studs on his knee. It's a blatant red, accidental or not. It's not, man. There was absolutely no malice behind that challenge. He slipped and his leg came out. Right? Right. David saying, Sam, please don't wear your rose-coloured glasses today. See it for what it is. Postecoglou starting his second season. His Ten Hag's in his third. Spurs are galaxies, but I don't. Pretty sure I don't. I know I don't have my glasses on, but I don't have red tinted specs on today. Ten Hag got schooled in that game. And I'm looking at this season for progression, for development. Now, I don't mind. I would probably have more patience than maybe an average fan. But as long as I see that performance there is 1%, maybe 2%, 3%, whatever it is, better than it was last week. Okay, we'll build on that. And that's what I thought that Crystal Palace game was. It gave us an opportunity to build on something that we've been wanting to see for a while in terms of the control of the game and the chance creation. The finishing, awful. But you can build on that. And then Twente was the next game that followed. And just any sort of goodness from that Palace game, in terms of style, completely gone. And then that's followed up by Spurs. And then that's now going to be followed up by Porto away. And then Villa away. I worry, man. I don't know. I think I'm more the fact that even as soon as that second half started, before the second goal went in, I'm like, where on earth is any sort of possibility of a turnaround going to come from in this game? And then they scored the second. Now, at that point, Spurs sat a little bit deeper, and then we had about a 10-minute period where we actually looked okay, but we still didn't create. And I don't know. United are just going to have to pull a performance out of their arse against Porto and Villa. Do something completely unexpected in terms of how good they are as a team, in terms of how well they communicate as a team. Yeah, and Jonathan, you're down there. Look, you reached the point, and the amount of times I've been back here, and it's so frustrating. I couldn't do the basics. Passing, I don't know what our passing percentage was in that game, but I guarantee you it wasn't high. Awful. Pressing. I'm totally convinced that the core of all of our structural problems is related to the pressing system. There's still sometimes the man marking pressing system just sort of comes back. I don't get it. I do not get it. Christian, you're saying Garnacho was our strongest forward against Tottenham, but it's like, mate, you are scraping a barrel, man. Nobody, apart from maybe Onana, had any sort of performance against Spurs. And we still lost 3-0. Dave, what are you saying? Unconvinced any of our midfield signings have improved things at all. Teams walk through us. And not signing a left-back this season is a huge mistake. I think Dalot has actually been one of our better players this season, but Dalot completely and utterly switched off. He's stood there looking at Brennan Johnson. And Brennan Johnson's not even sprinting, by the way. Just kind of jogging in. Oh, yeah. I'm over here, Van der Ven. Thank you very much. Just every man. And they're professional. This is the thing. Like, this is what you can't get your head around, isn't it? You're like, well, you train all week. You are professionals. You know how to play football. I'm pretty sure you know how to play football. How do you do that? How do you perform like that? It doesn't make sense. There's a disconnect in logic. And a lot of my thought process and thinking process is quite logical, quite practical. It's just kind of who I am, really. And there's no logic. And there's total disconnect in the expectations of what that team will do, but what that team ends up doing. Man, this team is anytime adversity even sort of peeps over the fence, this team crap themselves. Anytime. 1-0 down within 3 minutes and game was gone. After 3 minutes. At Old Trafford. Used to be a place where people were scared of coming to, man. It's absolute free-for-all. And look at this, right? How's this for an absolute horror stat? I'm going to take you back here. Do you remember Man United at Old Trafford under Ten Hag in his first season? Pretty sure we went undefeated. We've now lost 8 of our last 20 at home. And that includes no ends of humiliation. But what a turn of just what a flip. In your third season, you should be progressing. The development should just be there and consistent. And look, even if now we go to Porto and Villa and we turn the screw, we come out of nowhere against Porto and we blast them away, you'd be like, well, where has that been? You really telling me that the players are capable of that then? And that look, if United do that and come out against Porto and Villa and just looking so much better, then it will add to that conversation around the fact that it's to do with application by the players. Because if you go and do that against Porto and Villa, where were you against Spurs? Where were you against Liverpool? You can't pick and choose when you want to perform. It's your job too. perform as a Manchester United player in the way that you should. Let's go and read some more of your comments down here, right? Dennis saying basic structure isn't right. Delo can't play left back and exposes Martinez weak playing longer spaces. A ridiculous tactic to maintain. I disagree. Delo can play left back, and I think he has played left back decent. But I'm not going to sing his praises after yesterday. I think Delo in a team which has a lot more structure and consistency, I think Delo would look very, very good. Estevao saying exactly Van de Ven going through was one thing, but Delo leaving Brennan to run into the box was criminal. If he followed his man, he would have cleared it. And, as I said, from that goal, the Van de Ven goal, you can pick on 4, 5, 6 United players who didn't do their job properly. And it was absolutely a team goal that we conceded that should in no way, shape or form ever have been allowed to happen. What do you think happens next? Right, I'll ask you in the comments. What do you think happens next? So it's Porto and Villa. And then we've got an international break. And boy, the mood after the last international break was tough. Because it happened off the back of the Liverpool humiliation. And since then, we've come back and we've beaten Southampton and we've beaten Barnsley. And we had that frustration against Palace, the frustration against Twente, and now the humiliation. Again, humiliation. It's the right word to describe it. I mean, Gary Neville used every word under the sun. Disgusting, awful, disgraceful. They're all correct. I just don't know when INEOS will. I've said I thought INEOS would wait until November, but the scale of that defeat there, I think, accelerates the conversations. I'd be surprised if it didn't. Quite a few of you, well, the majority of you are saying down here. In fact, let me just ask you then. Okay, let's do a poll. What do you think happens next? What would the options be? Okay, I'll ask you a different one. Do you think Erik ten Hag will be in charge for Brentford? I think that's the fairest question I can ask. Right. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. There. I'm going to leave that up, and I'm going to go and ask. I'm going to go and read some more of your comments here. Richie's saying, shocking to think that Onana actually stops another landslide. Yeah. I thought Onana played well, man. Phil saying, with this current form, can we expect Ten Hag to win the league by 2028? No, you can't. There's no way. Of course you can't. It's not unreasonable to be saying that, man. It really isn't. Neil saying, commercial club man until INEOS act right and set the standards of players. Then we're mid if we're lucky. I don't know what that's got to do with Erik ten Hag right now. We never go on a winning streak, says Crimson. Now we've had... It's the false dawn feeling. It's probably like the core of the frustration. I mean, wouldn't really say there's been much of a dawn. What, 7-0 against Barnsley? I mean, it was great to see United score in 7, sure. But it was Barnsley. And it was quickly followed up by a 0-0 against Palace. So that didn't last too long. Werner's who cares about what Spurs did? Mike, you're saying it feels like more a when than an if situation. I still think it's an if. But I needed to see that. This is purely personal. I needed to see development from Ten Hag. I needed to see the framework of what it is we're genuinely working towards. I think the only example I've really got from that this season is that first 45 against Crystal Palace in the game we ultimately drew. So I'm not exactly going to use that as the marker of success. But that's all we've really got. Fulham game. The Fulham game was... there's no point going through and assessing any single game. Jordan saying, would you bring Jose back? Any conversations about any managers that have already been here, and I'm putting Solskjaer in the same conversation. Why would people give any sort of oxygen to these conversations? United aren't going to go backwards to go forwards. That includes Jose, that includes Van Gaal, that includes Moyes, that includes Solskjaer. No. Right? Someone down there saying, Daz, you're asking, do I still think he deserves the job? The fact that I have to wait so long and think about this before I answer the question is really kind of indicative of where he is right now. But no, I don't think Ten Hag deserves. I don't think any manager in football deserves. They have to prove that they deserve it. And right now, Ten Hag is not proving to me, to you, to fans, that he deserves the job. For me, I need to see that progress. I need to see that development, the 2% here, consistently getting slightly and slightly better overall as a team. If he shows that, I'll defend and I'll support him. But you play like that against Spurs and the complete capitulation of it, I can't defend it. You can't defend it. And no, I don't. Off the back of that, I don't think he deserves it. What else is saying? People saying down here. Thoughts on Xavi? Ladies and gents, with respect, I'm not going to be having conversations about any individual managers right now. I think a conversation about Erik Ten Hag's future is completely fair and just after what we've seen there and what we've seen across the course of this season. But I won't be speaking about credentials of any manager until we need to. And when we need to, we will. Brian is saying another 3-0 and he's done for. That's why I rate. I mean, Porto's going to be big. I suppose the Porto game isn't as big as the Villa game. All right. Off the back of the Spurs game, if you go and lose against Porto, it will only compound the misery, but it's the Villa game. And Villa away is a hard one, man. 550 votes are in. And I also said, well, do you think Ten Hag will be in charge for Brentford? 52% of you are saying yes, and 48% of you are saying no. So everyone's, well, pretty much bang on 50-50 right now. John's saying any new manager has the same players. And I think I'm going to go on record now to say that if I see this United team kind of come out of nowhere and just respond collectively as a team against Porto, and I see everybody committed 100% to every duel, every scrap, every second ball, I'm going to be happy to a certain degree, because I'm also going to be pissed off. Where was that against Spurs? Now, I think we saw a little bit of that in the second half against Spurs. It's a little bit more fight, but why is it that you've got to wait until you've got punched in the face and you got stamped on before you realise, oh, actually, I can fight? Why is that? Should be the other way around. You should be the person standing, swinging first. United are always second to the punch. Have been for a long time. So I don't think it's impossible that we do react and respond against Porto. But it will half piss me off even more for the fact that we didn't see it against Spurs. That we haven't seen it, really, this season. And then you go, you can to do with leaders, to do with tactics, to do with player application. It's probably all of these things. And William's saying, what if you don't get any results against Porto and Villa? Then that is going to be an incredibly long international break for Erik Ten Hag. Because I think it's around these international breaks where if INEOS are going to make a decision, that INEOS will make a decision. As I said, I thought that would be in the November time, but I also didn't expect a defeat on the magnitude of that. Now, losing to Spurs isn't going to be the be-all and end-all of the season. the game in terms of defeats, it's your Liverpool and your City. They're going to be the ones that have the biggest impact on fans, of course. But to lose to a Spurs team, which was bang mid-table where we were, played 5 games, won 2, drawn 1, lost 2, going into that game. So it's actually the 6th game of the season. Got that wrong. So we played 8 overall. To play a team like Spurs, who were exactly where we were in a table, to then see them do that to us and at home, it was a brutal defeat. It really, really was. I don't really know how Ten Hag pulls a rabbit out the hat here. I don't think it's like pull rabbit out the hat territory. It's either the players understand and they execute what you're asking them to do, or they don't know what you're asking them to do. One of those two things are correct, and maybe it's both of those two things at the same time. Chris is saying you can't tell me Ten Hag told his team to not bother playing football. No, I don't think that. But I don't even know if they know how to play it. I'm so confused. I really am. I'm going to read some more of your comments, the final few comments, and we'll wrap up for today. I'll do a lunchtime video on all of this, but I'll succinct it down into 8 minutes as I always do. Chetan saying if you're not fighting at home, where are you fighting? You should just be ready for a scrap in every single occasion. Being up for it. I genuinely thought you had a good summer. Honestly, I'm not just going to pretend that. I genuinely thought we had a good summer. Tyler's saying Ten Hag doesn't seem like he can motivate these group of players anymore. And again, part of that might be correct, but then the other side of that coin is a lot of these players. In life, you need to be a self-starter. In any situation or any job you're in. Sure, you can look towards the person in charge of you, your boss, whoever it is, for a bit of inspiration, for a bit of motivation. But if you can't motivate yourself, you will not succeed. Because a lot of it is always internal reflection. Your internal drive is ultimately kind of what gets you to positions where you can succeed in life. And then you get your motivators to help take you up even further. But that internal drive just said that wasn't there, man. Will there be that pride response against Porto? But we're talking about fucking pride responses here, man. 30th of September. It's bad. Really is bad. I agree with you down there, said Rich. I've said this so many damn times. Drop the press. And Gary was talking about how it looked like United dropped into a mid-block yesterday. I don't even think it really was, because you still saw, whether it was Xerxes, whether it was Bruno, whether it was Rashford or Garnacho, one of them just running forward and stepping away from the press. Not the press, stepping away from the shape to press on their own, and then nobody else followed it up. That was pretty much, in my opinion, as bad as it could have been. I think Gary Neville was completely right to label it as, well, every word under the sun. And I'm going to try and sort of wrap up where my mind is in my lunchtime video. I can see from down here in the comments, a lot of you have lost faith in Ten Hag. Some of you still feel that it's not really you can't go as simply as trust the process. I think that's just not the right way to describe it. But if I'm trusting the process, and I see that against Spurs, it's only going to end one way for Erik. If we don't consistently turn it around, and not even two wins against Porto and Villa do that, it's bad. I'm going to wrap this up for today. Can I just say thank you all for tuning in? The amount of times I've had to put these bad boys on, I'm probably going to have to do it more. Let's be totally honest. All right. I'll be here tomorrow with the starting 11 for Porto. Or is it tomorrow? Thursday. No, we play Thursday, so I'll be here on Wednesday with that. Leave your comments on the video after it's finished. But thank you all for tuning in. Damn. Damn.